Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at Saturn's upcoming entrance into the sign of Aries alongside of Neptune in Aries. The two planets will conjoin, not until next year, but they will be in very close proximity for a good chunk of this year. So we're going to look at that timeline for Saturn and Neptune's conjunction. And then we're going to look at 5 themes that are sort of paradoxical. It is as though the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune contains these kinds of contradictory statements, and you're forced as a student of astrology to kind of go, well, it could go like this, or it could go the complete opposite. We want to understand those dualities that come up with Saturn and Neptune the best we can, why they come up, which is just as important, and then what kinds of paradoxical statements do Saturn and Neptune make when they get together. I think this will help us prepare ourselves for the upcoming transit of Saturn and Neptune together in Aries. So that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. It really does help our channel to grow. We want this place to be the place that is part of your daily spiritual practice. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Coming up, we have a speaker series, or excuse me, not speaker series, though that's coming up too. Live events page, go to the live talks under events, and you'll see I'm doing a talk on May 15th on Jupiter in Cancer. It's going to be a deep dive into the exaltation status of Jupiter in Cancer. So you want to learn more about that. Come join me on May 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. If you can't attend live, you get the recording afterward when you register for the talk. So hope to see some of you there. The other thing that's coming up is if you go to courses, click on first year course. My first year program in ancient Hellenistic astrology begins on June 22nd. Of course, everything I teach includes a modern archetypal and psychological perspective woven in. But this is a class in ancient Hellenistic astrology that will prepare you to read charts for others. Or if you're someone who just astrology is a part of your spiritual life, your personal practice, your inner life, then this is something that is designed to help you take your knowledge and understanding to the next level. I think there's nothing more helpful than really becoming our own astrologers. You'll always have content and people that you turn to, and that's always helpful. I do too, but it's really helpful to be a little bit more in the driver's seat, understanding the language, the why behind everything. So check this class out. At the end of today's talk, there is an informational video tagged on. You can learn more about the course if you stick around afterward today. And then there's early bird payments. Those are the sale that we run on the course goes until May 15th. So take advantage of that. And then the need-based tuition option is there for you. If you want to take the class, come study with us, but you need a little help. No shame, just use the tuition assistance. You can pick within a sliding scale. We do that to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying something sacred in a wonderful community space. So on that note, let us now turn our attention to the real-time clock. We're taking a look today, kind of a first look at Saturn and Neptune conjoining. There is a deep dive that I did on Saturn, Neptune on the shop page in a webinar format as well, by the way. The shop page on my website has tons of stuff you can find that I've done in the past. So here is Saturn entering Aries on May 25th. Now that's coming up pretty soon. If we take this forward, we're going to see that they stay within about a degree of one another for most of their time in 2025. Neptune turns retrograde in early July, and then not too much longer, Saturn turns retrograde by mid-July. They're about a degree, a little less than a degree apart, right? They're actually, what is it, like 13 minutes of a degree apart. So almost a conjunction by July. So between May and July, the two planets are very close and getting closer. Then they both retrograde. And what happens then is, I'll go forward by weeks here to speed this up. We're going to see Saturn enter the last part of Pisces in September. So by about September 1st, Saturn has retrograded into Pisces. Then Neptune will follow shortly after and will enter Pisces in late October. So during that time, September to late October, the two planets are no longer in the same temple, but then they return to the same temple within 3 degrees in October. So we're going to get something of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction energy again in Pisces in those September, October, November months. Take this forward a little bit. We're going to see Saturn turn direct really by the end of November, beginning of December. And then we're going to see Neptune turn direct by about early to mid-December. And then Neptune will move back into Aries late January. And then Saturn will enter Aries again early to mid-February. So this is the dance that they do between now and the early part of 2026, not officially coming through a conjunction yet. Now, their actual conjunction will therefore take place. This is the day that they meet, February 20th of 2026. And then from that point, Saturn starts separating and gets to that 3-degree separation range by late March, early April. And from that point on, they are really no longer in the exact space of that conjunction by degree. You can see them further separating on. So they're going to be co-present in the same temple, which is a thing. But between now and a little less than a year from now, that's the time during which we are going to be experiencing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction symbolically, energetically, as it has a promise to show up in our lives in some way. You're going to see that from late May through about September. You're really starting to notice it. And then especially get into that early couple months into 2026, those first few months, very strongly expressing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So it's a good time to get to know it right now as we're waiting for these two planets to come into that configuration. Here's the thing to know about these two planets. Saturn and Neptune, when they get together, especially in a conjunction where the planets are known to blend or kind of merge their qualities and symbols together to become something like a blend or a mix, like a little planetary cocktail or something. I guess that's an appropriate image for Neptune in particular. But anyhow, when these two planets come together, they, especially in the conjunction, they bring a really peculiar mix of things because they have a tendency to represent things that are opposite. The polarity, when merged together, brings us all of these statements where it almost seems like they're contradicting one another. So I'm going to give you 5 examples of things to watch for that represent these very interesting dualities or tensions of opposites that can seem like contradictions or like almost like a little paradoxical, but it's a real thing. And you're going to notice sometimes that both sides of a duality are present, sometimes alternating or even at the exact same time. Now, one of the reasons for this is also the fact that Saturn, when Neptune was discovered, it was actually in a conjunction with Saturn. There's a video on my channel that you could go and watch called The Mystical Saturn. I recommend just keyword searching Mystical Saturn and watching that video for a really in-depth look at how ancient astrologers viewed the planet Saturn, much of which is now attributed to the outer planet Neptune. It's fascinating how mystical Saturn was for ancient astrologers. And now for modern astrologers, Saturn represents almost like the anti-mystical. It's typically associated with things like reality and limits and hard, earthy practicality and lack of imagination. But the ancient world, it was not like that. Saturn had a very different meaning, a very different set of significations. And that had to do with its status as the dimmest and most distant planet that sat at the edge of this world and the numinous mind of the universe or the divine, the gods, the archetypal realm that lay beyond the material world. So Saturn was a kind of gatekeeper between this world and otherworldliness, and was the planet associated with oppositional tension about things that are material versus spiritual, or any other kinds of opposites. That the study of opposites, of course, was a significant part of the metaphysics of ancient astrology, as it was the metaphysics of something like Taoism or even yoga philosophy. Of course, they're carriers of astrology as well in India. So understanding how opposites interact through the Saturnian lens is something that a lot of people never learn. Saturn is a planet that holds up opposites as separate and apart, and often warring or battling with each other in a kind of, in what you or I might call like black or white thinking, very binary. However, that binary, that tension of opposites, was thought to be creative and a fundamental part of how life is constantly moving and regenerating was through this held tension of opposites that refuses to let go, so to speak. So with that in mind, there are some oppositional tensions that Saturn brings up in any aspect, but they get really peculiar and interesting when you get to Neptune. So all of that being said, is just like a little philosophical precursor. Here are the dualities to watch for, and they really can swing in either direction with Saturn, Neptune, or they can be both at once. I'll try to give you some examples. Number one, sobriety or loss of sobriety. With Neptune, we often think about intoxication, or illusion or fantasy. We also think about imagination, mysticism, otherworldliness. So that's the Neptune spectrum, so to speak. When we think about Saturn and the polarity that Saturn tends to bring, the dynamic duality that Saturn represents in any combination it enters into, apply that to Neptune, and now we're starting to think about sobering up, where Saturn can represent this kind of sobriety and bringing of an oppositional tension into clear focus. If Neptune is intoxication, Saturn provides this sort of reality check of sobriety. On the other hand, what's really interesting is that where Saturn can represent a tendency toward repression or control of desire or appetite or something like that, Neptune can sort of flood Saturn and bring forth a loss of sobriety, intoxication, addiction, issues with addiction, and simultaneously, for some people, may represent the ability to let go and enjoy something that you've been repressing. So what's interesting is how contextual this transit becomes. Are you someone, wherever this is landing in your chart, in whatever area of life, who might get pulled in the direction of greater sobriety, better control of appetites or impulses to dissolve your consciousness in an altered state of some kind? Or are you someone who, rather than needing more sobriety, you need more imagination, you need to let go more, you need some kind of flood of otherworldliness to come in? You'll see that, and sometimes it's also back and forth as you're trying to work out the right relationship to sobriety versus let's call it altered states or intoxication. So it's really interesting that Saturn Neptune often represents both. Anyway, number two will be boundaries dissolved or boundaries established. Now, Saturn hits Neptune, and let's say Saturn as the gatekeeper, as the boundary, as the wall between this world and the next, as it was thought of in ancient astrology, that sense of a limit or a boundary or a wall of some kind comes into contact with Neptune, and it disperses. The wall comes down, just like Saturn Neptune. It was in the late 80s or early 90s or whatever it was that the Berlin Wall came down. All astrologers who've read a little bit of Richard Tarnas know that one. So, the dissolution of boundaries or barriers is a Saturn-Neptune thing. But interestingly, Saturn and Neptune come together, and something that has been relatively formless or boundaryless starts to come into form. I think it was Rudolf Steiner who noted that Saturn's quarter movements every 7 years, that around 7, the first one coincides with kids like getting their teeth, so hard boundaries, clear things like teeth, or set limits or boundaries or structures can be established out of something that has been relatively formless or boundaryless. when a baby starts identifying themselves as differentiated from the environment, it's kind of Saturn Neptune, like you could say. But that's so interesting about the transit is that it can go in both directions, and sometimes wave patterns will occur throughout the transit in both directions. Now there's boundaries, now there's dissolution of boundaries, almost as though we're getting a class in how to have boundaries and how to be fluid with them simultaneously. Number 3 is hope or faith retained or hope or faith lost. In my humble opinion, hope, faith, doubt, despair, grief, loss, as well as redemption and healing are part of the fabric of life. I don't think they're just real parts of life, right? So I don't see this as particularly negative. I see it as just a feature of life that we all better reconcile ourselves to internally and come to appreciate as a part of life rather than fight against it. But that's easier said than done when you're in it, right? Same for me. So Saturn and Neptune can be about that. If your faith is rainbows, butterflies, unicorns, nothing wrong with those things. There's a lot of that in my house, right? With my girls. It's hard to retain that view of reality when you run into things that are really heavy and dark. But does that mean that you then need to adopt stickers and images of rain clouds and hurricanes or tornadoes and I don't know, disaster? No. The ebb and flow of darkness and light, redemption and fallenness as archetypes is a part of the flow of Saturn and Neptune. The loss, as well as the recognition of the eternal spirit that lives on, that there's a very interesting relationship with periods of darkness or existential doubt, worry, hopelessness, loss of direction, and then the reemergence of those things. They work together in very mysterious ways when Saturn and Neptune are co-present. So you have to know that and be willing to ride that train. It's almost like a psychedelic experience with these two planets. Anyway, the reality check or the dissolution of worldliness. So similar kind of dichotomy where Saturn can hit Neptune and provide us with where we've been idealistic or even intolerant because we can't accept the world in its shortcomings, its flaws, its imperfections for what it is because we're measuring everything against an ideal standard. Saturn will provide the reality check. Sorry, life includes toots. Life is a little, there's some, this is a juicy, messy place. Saturn will kind of come in and there'll be like a little bit of a gut check for the idealistic Neptune. On the other hand, Neptune will inflect upon Saturn. It's like, hey, Eeyore, have you noticed that life is teeming with the miraculous, reflections of infinity? Have you noticed that this is the most mysterious, amazing, awe-inspiring place ever? Oh, you haven't. That's because you've got your head up your ass, So it can go but the interesting thing is, again, the flow between the two. And it is, I think, very difficult as a practitioner. If I'm working with someone and they have a transit of Saturn to Neptune or Neptune to Saturn in their natal chart, it's like really hard to predict exactly which direction within these dichotomies it will go because it's not a super predictable part of this pattern of their interaction. It ebbs and flows. It dissolves and it solidifies in these very fluid ways. And then finally would be imagination versus literalism. There are some of us who, whether it's epistemologically, philosophically, we can't see beyond a very linear, maybe more time-bound version of things. Everything has to, maybe we're even operating unconsciously with a kind of empirical, objectivist view of life. This is a machine that I'm a part of, right? And Neptune will come along and have a way of transporting us into an alternate mode of knowing, the kind of knowing that comes up during psychedelic experiences or meditation or prayer or synchronicities or dreams or lucid dreaming or ceremonies or, a cacao ceremony or like whatever. So the imaginal way of knowing, I want to call it that. Not when I say imagination, of course, I do not mean some kind of something that's not real. I see the imagination as like an epistemological way of knowing. It's the kind of knowing that is like a part of the dream time in Australia, or it's a part of the ancient understanding of the Tao or the I Ching. It's there in astrology. It's there in indigenous traditions that have ways of working in an animistic world. That world that is communicative, alive, sentient, the cosmos as an embodied being, not a machine. Very Neptune. Saturn sometimes, especially nowadays, the way we tend to understand Saturn and relate to Saturn will tend to constitute more in terms of the literalism, the objectification, etc. It's really not fair because Saturn is not traditionally the planet that's somehow associated with literalism. It's associated with things like death and impermanence and decay. But that for mystics was, when meditated upon, the gateway to an understanding of eternality. So Saturn had this very close relationship to eternity, as long as you were willing to accept and look at impermanence, death, decay, transience, etc. So anyway, imagination versus literalism, a more concrete empirical mode versus a more mystical mode, superstition, a tendency to dismiss facts in favor of fantastical, deluded thinking. But on the other hand, Saturn will sometimes be the literal objectivist thinking that forgets the animistic world, right? So it's back and forth again. I hope that in introducing you to these basic dualities of Saturn and Neptune, that we get the wheels turning, because once they come in, these waves will just start happening. There's already been some interaction of these two planets in Pisces, but it will become much more acute at the end of this May, all the way up until September. We'll really get a taste for this, and we'll do some horoscopes and break things down further as we go. But that's it for today. After I sign off, check out the upcoming astrology program. I think there are several reasons to study astrology. The first one I would say is that if you're someone who takes it in regularly, but you're looking for a guided, structured approach that takes the guesswork out of having to take information from all these different sources and put it together, it's really nice to come into a lineage. I've been teaching for 15 years. Thousands of students have come through our programs. We have a full staff and community. It's a very rich community learning experience. And it really gives you an anchor, a structure, and a tradition to follow that you can also develop your own voice and your own insights from within. You can be your own astrologer within the way that we set things up. So if that's appealing to you, consider studying with us and check out the video next that tells you more about this upcoming Year 1 program beginning June 22nd. All right, bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology that begins at the end of June. June 22nd is our starting date. I'm going to take you over to the course page to tell you more about the program and what you will learn while you are in it. So here we go over to the Nightlight Astrology website. You can find this at nightlightastrology.com. Click on the courses tab, go to the first year course. Now this program is ideal for people who maybe have a little bit of background already in astrology. Maybe you've done some studying on your own independently, taken some courses or webinars and workshops, but you're looking to deepen your understanding of astrology. And maybe Hellenistic astrology in particular has been calling to you. I'll tell you more about what Hellenistic astrology is in a minute, but on the first year course page, you're going to find everything that the course includes. I want to make the structure of the course clear first, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you 5 reasons that I think anyone might have for studying astrology, and you can see if you check any of those boxes. First of all, there are 30 classes on the year. It's just a little under a year-long program with 30 webinars. Every webinar is 2 to 3 hours long, including a lively Q&A and conversational section after we finished our lesson for the day. Each of those lessons I lead personally through live webinars, so you can attend those live. If you want to follow along at your own pace in your own time on your own schedule, you can always look at the recordings and take those in. And I'm going to show you what the class page looks like so you can see how you can interact with the course as uniquely and creatively as you want to. But you can either attend the live webinars or listen to the recordings or audio or video. In between major units of study within those 30 classes, we have separate classes outside of the 30 classes that are essentially tutoring sessions led by our staff, our course directors. We have 3 of them for our first year program, 3 tutors that help me guide every single class you're in and lead study sessions, and are also staffing an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions, look at charts, practice what you're learning with all of your classmates and with tutors there to help you. They'll always answer questions within a business day. So it's a really well-staffed, well-structured program. In between those major units of study and the breakout sessions, we also have guest speakers that come in throughout the year that you get free access to. The recordings are archived for you in your class folders. So you're getting people within our curriculum. And you're also getting to visit with some astrologers who are outside of the Nightlight School, but we really admire their work, and so we bring them in. You also have a ton of bonus material. With every lesson, we have recommended quizzes, study guides, optional reading. And that allows people who are really, really, intense, deep, like studious types to go as far as you want to with the material, while other people who are maybe, content to take things in at, just kind of taking in the classes, that's there for you too. So you can kind of go as deeply as you want to. The class, as the year goes on, goes through major units of study in ancient Hellenistic astrology. So if you're not familiar with ancient Hellenistic astrology, this is the earliest form of horoscopic astrology. This is where the astrology that you've probably learned today comes from originally. And that makes some of its features unique. Like, for example, ancient astrologers utilized whole sign houses. We study why they used whole sign houses, how they used them, and we study the why behind really everything: houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities, essential and accidental dignities, delineation approaches. How do you read and predict within a natal chart? All of those theoretical areas of astrology we not only learn how to do, but we learn the why behind it. And this is what I think people find most empowering about the course, is that ancient astrology really helps to give you the rationale for everything so that you have the insight available to go off script. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you're learning about a sign, Aries or Taurus or a Gemini, something like that. Ancient astrology won't just give you a list of the adjectives or keywords or descriptions of, say, a sign or a planet. It will give you an underlying philosophical explanation that then allows you to extrapolate from it the kinds of lists that you read in textbooks, which means you'll have an understanding of why everything on a list in a textbook is there in the first place. And you'll also have the insight and creativity available to add things to the list that are a part of your own unique intuition and contribution to astrology. And this is what ancient astrologers wanted students of astrology to learn: the why behind everything. So this is a class where, even though you're seeing things like planet signs, houses, dignities, aspects, and you're like, oh, I've already learned about those things. Not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology. I don't mean to sound condescending, but like, truly, most people's experience coming through this program is, wow, I had no idea all that I didn't know about the roots of everything that I've understood thus far about astrology. So it really is about digging into the philosophical core of why we do everything. And then you have greater intuitive and creative capacity as an astrological craftsman or craftswoman. So anyway, that's a brief explanation of why I think Hellenistic astrology is important. Not to mention that ancient astrology was really focused on our ability to accurately describe and predict things in the realm of karma, fate, and destiny, whereas modern astrology's hallmark and strength is psychological depth. And so when you put the two together in our program, which is why it's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, I think you have something really special. So on that note, you can see everything that we cover here. So there's a video with some of our alumni you can watch. Everything is there on the page. Now, there are 5 reasons that I want to touch on briefly before I tell you about your payment options and need-based tuition. These are 5 reasons to study astrology that if you mark any of these boxes, especially if you mark several of them, then I think it's a good indication that you might be ideal for this program, might be an ideal fit. So the first one is, if you find that astrology has become a part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly spiritual practice, it is a part of how you lead an inner life, then there is nothing more empowering than deepening your connection to that language, because that puts you more in the driver's seat. It's always good to have astrologers that you rely on, teachers that you listen to, get a little objective perspective, especially when you're looking at your own chart through a reading. But there's really nothing more empowering than learning to speak the language at a deeper level for yourself. And if that calls to you, if you want to understand things and be able to speak more confidently and clearly about this sacred language that you love, and this is a great reason to take a structured program. Number 2 is that you feel called to read charts for people. Look, not everyone who takes our programs is on a professional track, but we have 4 years worth of professional training programs at Nightlight that will prepare you to read professionally for others if that's the path that you're on. Maybe you don't even know if you're on that path. That's fine too. Many people take our programs just for the sake of their own personal enrichment, and again, to be kind of more in the driver's seat with respect to your astrological journey. You have more of an understanding. You can be more confident in reading symbols and experiencing transits with your own understanding that you've cultivated. But sometimes people want to read for other people. This will definitely set you up to do that. We have a certification track where you can take exams at the end of every year. They're optional. You don't have to if you're not on that level of interest. Number 3, you have done a lot of self-study. You've heard things from here and there, but you're looking to bring it all together. It is overwhelming to study astrology on your own. So if you want organization, structure, and coherence, what you're getting in this program is going on 15 years of training astrologers, 15 years of developing curriculum that has in mind the overwhelm that many people experience. And this program is structured year 1, year 2, year 3, however far you want to go with our curriculum, to give you an organized, structured, coherent way of understanding the history and language of astrology from both ancient times to modern times, in all of the vastness that the field includes. And also, as we go, we want to give you the confidence that you are a part now of an astrological lineage. Astrology has always been practitioner-based. Coming through Nightlight, you are going to have the opportunity to feel aligned with a lineage. If you like my work, if you feel aligned with the way I speak the language, then this might be a good reason to come study with us. Now, if you're seeking the why behind things, if you're like, yeah, that's interesting, I get it, I understand, but why? Why signs? What's the difference between a sign and a house? Why do they ever come up with a sign and a house? What's the distinction philosophically? Why does Mars represent this? Why does Mars in this sign represent that? If you are someone who feels empowered by understanding the why behind things, you are going to love this program, because that's how I am as a teacher. That's how I am as a person. And that's what this program is really all about. Number 5, you are looking for astrological community. Look, I think Nightlight is unique in terms of the kind of warmth, acceptance, safety, and inclusiveness that our community includes intellectually, spiritually. We are really pride ourselves on being a peaceful kind of family. I'm a Cancer, right? So it's kind of a family-oriented environment. So anyway, I will end it there. If you check any of those boxes, you may want to consider studying with us. Now, I'm going to take you over to 2 things. I want to show you the dashboard. So here is the Thinkific page. You're going to join this, and on your dashboard, you're going to find any courses that you've enrolled in at Nightlight, and there are many, so you may end up in being involved in multiple courses, and you'll find that they're all there on your dashboard. Click on one of them, and it will take you in. You're going to find that on the left-hand side, there's orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar, all the technical stuff you need to know when you join the course. And then you're going to find that when you go through the lessons, that the lesson includes the video, the audio, the slides, the transcripts, the Q&A box text if you couldn't make it live and see what people were talking about, flashcards, homework, a bonus PDF with all sorts of additional recommended reading, bonus videos, additional video links for bonus material. So every single time that you want to visit something within the course, everything is nicely organized. So you can see here, I'm going to pause this before it starts going, but you can embed the video right there. It's embedded and you can watch it. And then if you wanted to, you could also, right here, you could also download the video and watch it on your own device. And that's same for the audio as well. And then As you go, you'll see all of the lessons are laid out. The study sessions are also recorded if you can't make those live. So everything is nicely arranged on the website for you. And that makes it a course that if you wanted to take 3 years to accomplish, you could take 3 years to accomplish. If you want to take it for the sake of getting certified, you have the full year plus an additional year to take the exam. So 2 years total that we give people if you're on a professional track. But most people complete the program in a year. And a lot of people, over 50% of our students, go on to our year 2 and then our year 3 and horary programs as well. Now, final thing I'm going to show you is right here. You're going to find here is the enrollment options at the bottom of the first year course page. Again, this is at nightlightastrology.com, and you're going to click on the first year course, go to the bottom. The early bird payment saves you several $100s off the cost of the course. That's available till May 15th. Early bird installment plan saves you on the installment plan, regular cost of the course. That's also only available until May 15th. And then need-based tuition. All of our programs include a need-based option where we give you a sliding scale and we say, you pick your monthly tuition number within this sliding scale, which is greatly reduced off the normal tuition price. That is for people who are on a fixed or limited income, receiving disabilities, single mom, whatever the case might be. We want to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying astrology. So you don't have to feel any shame. If that is you, if you need help, if you want to take this, but you need to make it work within a tight budget, we get it. Times are tough right now. We don't think people should be priced out of studying a sacred subject like astrology. So we've been offering need-based pricing for 15 years. Nightlight is a donation-based school. It started that way. We have a sliding scale, so it's kind of like donation. You get to choose your rate anyhow. So if that's something that will help you, please use it. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it gave you a really deep and comprehensive introduction to what the course is all about and why you might find it exciting to come study with us starting at the end of June. So any questions you have about the program as you're visiting the course, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. We'll be glad to talk about anything that you have questions about. We are here and we have a wonderful staff of people at Nightlight who will be a part of your learning experience and are all glad to help you. All right, that's it. We'll see you again later. Bye.